I met her at a friend's housewarming party 5 years ago. From the moment we started talking, it felt like we had known each other forever. We had the same dry sense of humor, the same love for obscure indie films, and the same passionate hatred for cilantro. What began as casual dating quickly grew into something deeper, and within 6 months, I was completely in love with her. But from the very beginning, there was one strange condition to our relationship. Nobody could know about us. At first, I didn't think much of it. She told me her family was nosy, always prying into her personal life, and she had just come out of a messy breakup where mutual friends had taken sides. She wanted something that was just ours for a while, something free from scrutiny and interference. It made sense, so I agreed. Months passed, and every time I gently brought up the idea of making our relationship public, she had another reason to wait. Her grandmother was ill, and she didn't want to disrupt the family dynamic. She was applying for a promotion and needed to focus. She was struggling with anxiety and couldn't handle the social pressure. I loved her, so I waited. And waited. For 5 years, I lived as a ghost in her life. We had separate apartments. We never posted photos together. We never attended family gatherings as a couple. If we ran into someone she knew while we were out, I was introduced as a friend from work. And yet, despite the secrecy, our relationship felt real. We traveled together, to places where no one would recognize us. We had our favorite restaurants, our own little corners of the city, far from where either of us lived. We spent holidays together in private, creating our own traditions. When we were alone, there was love. Or at least, I thought there was. Then last month, something inside me broke. I told her I couldn't do this anymore. I didn't want to be hidden. I wanted a normal relationship. I wanted to meet her family. I wanted to post a single picture of us without fear of who might see it. I wanted a future with her, one where I didn't have to pretend I didn't exist. I wanted to propose someday, without worrying about who she was hiding me from. She went quiet. Then she asked me to come over the next evening, so we could talk. For the next 24 hours, I wrestled with hope and dread. Maybe she was finally ready. Maybe I had waited long enough. When I arrived at her apartment, she was already sitting at the kitchen table, a folder of papers in front of her. She looked exhausted, like she hadn't slept. Without a word, she pushed the folder toward me. "This is why," she whispered. Inside, I found a marriage certificate dated 6 years ago. Family photos. Her. Another man. 2 children. A boy around 7, a little girl about 5. My world imploded. Through her tears, she told me everything. She had married young, at 22. By 24, she had 2 kids and had already realized she had made a terrible mistake. Her husband was controlling, tracking her movements, monitoring her phone. But she stayed. For the children. When we met, she had been in the middle of a trial separation, something her family hadn't known about. The plan had been to finalize the divorce, to start fresh. But then her husband had a health scare. Guilt and family pressure pulled her back into their home. She said she couldn't bear to end things with me, that I was her escape, her real life. For 5 years, she had been living 2 lives, one with him, one with me, carefully orchestrating every moment so neither world collided. I felt sick. Every memory we had together twisted into something darker. Every "I love you" was now laced with an asterisk, an unspoken deception. I asked her if she ever planned to tell me. "I wanted to leave him so many times," she murmured. "But something always happened. His mother got cancer. He lost his job. My daughter started having trouble at school. The right time never came. I walked out. I ignored her calls. Her messages. She showed up at my workplace, and I had security escort her out. She emailed me long explanations and apologies, but I couldn't bring myself to read them fully. 2 weeks later, I finally agreed to meet her. She arrived at the park alone, looking drained, as if the weight of her double life had finally crushed her. She told me she had confessed everything to her husband, that she had moved out, that she was ready to make things right. She said she wanted to be with me, for real this time, that once the divorce was finalized, we could finally have the life we had always dreamed of. But I couldn't do it. 5 years of lies. 5 years of being someone's secret. 5 years of unknowingly being the other man. I couldn't look at her without seeing every deception, every hidden truth. I couldn't trust a single word. So I asked her the only question left in my heart. Why didn't you just tell me from the beginning? I would never have knowingly been part of someone's affair, especially not when children were involved. When I confronted her, she admitted she had been afraid of losing me, and as time passed, the truth became harder and harder to confess. But that didn't change what she had done. "You stole 5 years of my life," I told her. 5 years I could have spent building something real with someone who was honest with me, someone who existed fully in the light instead of just in stolen moments. Even now, she won't stop trying to reach me. She keeps calling, keeps emailing. And then, as if things weren't already unbearable, her husband somehow got my number. He left a voicemail filled with rage, threats, and accusations. To him, I was a homewrecker, the reason his family had fallen apart. He had no idea until she finally confessed. And yet, for all his anger, I felt no satisfaction in his pain. I just felt exhausted, like I had been caught in the middle of something I never even knew I was part of. I blocked them both. I started considering moving, leaving behind the apartment where I had spent years believing in something that was never real. But the worst part isn't even the betrayal, the deception, or the lies. It's the realization that the person I loved most in the world didn't actually exist. She was a fragment, a version of herself carefully constructed for me, shaped by stolen hours and hidden meetings. The real her, the one who made choices, who lived with the consequences, who had secrets I was never meant to know, was a stranger. I keep replaying our time together, searching for clues. Were there signs? Should I have known? 5 years is a long time to be completely blindsided. After sharing my story, I was overwhelmed by support and questions from people trying to understand how something like this could happen. So here are the details I hadn't fully processed until now. No, I had never been to her home, not until the very end. She always came to mine. She claimed her roommates were nosy. The one time I insisted on driving her home after she sprained her ankle, she had me drop her off at an apartment building she didn't even live in. She had separate social media accounts, one I knew about and another I never saw. She had 2 phones, a work phone and a personal phone, and she never took calls around me unless she stepped outside. I thought these were quirks, part of her anxiety, part of the way she navigated life. Now I see them for what they were, deliberate choices to maintain her double life. Her husband had no idea about me until she finally told him everything. From his voicemail, it was clear he blamed me completely. He saw me as the reason his marriage was destroyed, the reason his family had fallen apart. And as much as I despised her for what she had done to me, I felt sick for those kids. They must be confused, hurting, caught in the wreckage of a truth they never asked for. Some people asked if I would ever consider taking her back once her divorce was finalized. The answer is simple: absolutely not. This wasn't a moment of weakness, a single mistake. This was 5 years of carefully constructed deception. Thousands of lies stacked on top of each other, each one calculated to maintain an illusion. The level of manipulation it takes to live 2 separate lives so seamlessly, it chills me to think about it. Since everything came to light, I've started therapy. My therapist says I'm experiencing both grief and trauma at the same time, mourning a relationship that meant everything to me while simultaneously dealing with a betrayal so profound it makes me question my own judgment, my ability to trust, even my perception of reality. For now, I'm just focusing on healing, moving forward. I've told my closest friends what happened, and that has helped make it feel real, less like some surreal nightmare. Next month, I'm moving to a different neighborhood. A fresh start in a place where every street corner doesn't remind me of a lie. If there's one lesson in all of this, it's to trust your instincts. If something feels off in a relationship, if someone is keeping you separate from the rest of their life, giving you vague reasons that never quite add up, there's usually a reason. And it's rarely a good one. 2 months have passed since I found out the truth, and I wanted to close this chapter with one final reflection. I did move. I changed my number. I created new email accounts. I'm not running, but I needed space to heal. Through mutual friends, I found out that she and her husband are attempting reconciliation, supposedly for the children's sake. Part of me feels sorry for him. He's making the same mistake I did, trusting someone who has already proven she can lie with ease. The most unexpected part of all this has been reconnecting with an old friend. She reached out after hearing what happened, and we've been spending time together, just as friends. But after years in a relationship built on secrecy, her honesty is refreshing in a way I can't quite put into words. I'm not ready for anything romantic, but for the first time in a long time, I can imagine being ready someday. Someone once messaged me, saying I had wasted 5 years of my life. But I don't see it that way anymore. I learned something valuable. if painful, about myself, about people, about love. I learned to ask questions and not accept vague answers. I learned that love without honesty isn't love at all. To anyone out there living in the shadows of someone else's life, waiting for the day when they will finally acknowledge you, please know that you deserve better. You deserve to be part of someone's whole world, not just the hidden corners of it.